Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we have a lot to get into on this episode of Orioles on the Verge as we're going to break down the first one-third of the season. The Orioles now 54 games into their season, sitting at 35-19, playing very good baseball. And we're going to break down what has gone right, where they could improve, and where we see things going the rest of the way as we approach the month of June. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker online with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. So as I mentioned, the Orioles 35-19 after their first 54 games, playing very good baseball right now. They have two MVP candidates at the top of their order in Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman, performing as expected. Gunnar hitting a grand slam in Wednesday night's game against the Red Sox to clinch a series victory. That game also featured Corbin Burnes on the mound, and so far, he's delivering as the top-of-the-rotation ace that the Orioles expected when they acquired him. You also have Jordan Westburg, Colton Cowser, among other hitters in this very productive lineup, having good seasons. There have been some blemishes along the way, though. The bullpen has been up and down. The Orioles have also experienced their fair share of starting pitching injuries to this point in the season, but are getting by, and we're going to look at all of that in this episode. But Bob, I'll start with you. Just kind of give us your general thoughts on the Orioles as they're now hit the one-third mark.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. 35-19, on pace for exactly 105 wins. Not in first place, kind of reminiscent of last year when Tampa Bay was like 4 games up on us about this time. I think the Yankees are around 2, maybe 1. I think it depends on their game today. And I just feel like we haven't played our best baseball, especially on offense. I think once the offense really gets clicking, and by then I'm sure the pitching will probably slip a little bit. It's always a balance, but I just feel like the lineup has been led by Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westburg for the most part. They've been the big guys. Ryan O'Hearn's been really good. Colton Cowser's been good. A lot of other guys have been pretty solid as well, but those three have really just spearheaded the offense. It's been up and down, but the starting pitching, you just can't complain. I mean, they haven't all been healthy at the same time, but Corbin Burnes, Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, Dean Kramer, John Means, fingers crossed there, and Cole Irvin just been fantastic. Even Albert Suarez come in, made 4 starts, has a 1.53 ERA on the season. And yeah, the bullpen has been shaky, but I still feel really confident that by the time September gets here, it's going to be in pretty good shape, whether it's from a trade, whether it's from a promotion from AAA. There's some guys that could help out there, or just guys getting fine-tuned as the season goes on and reaching their peak around the end of the season. I'm very confident that this team's going to flirt with 100 wins once more.
You guys aren't on Twitter enough. Clearly, Zach is not on Twitter. No, I agree. Despite the ups and downs, and there are holes, and we'll talk a lot about pitching tonight, I feel like. But I just want to talk about hitting. My general take on this team, as far as the hitting's concerned, they have the 4th highest. Some of these numbers that I jotted down are before tonight's game, actually. So they might be skewed by the time people who are listening to this later hear it. But the Orioles have the 4th highest winning percentage in all of baseball. 16-8 on the road, and they were 17-7 against teams above 500, which is one of my favorite numbers to look at because some of these other teams that are top of their division even are not that good against really good teams. I just think the football brain mentality is just exhausting. Like, they get swept by St. Louis. That wasn't good. That wasn't fun. But they turned around and completely dominated and swept a 4-game road sweep against the White Sox. And You can downplay that all you want by saying it's just the White Sox, but that's still 4 games on the road, which is incredibly difficult to do against anybody. And I just think offensively, again, we'll talk about pitching a lot tonight. We'll get into all of that. But for me, like, it's the hitting. Like, offensively, this lineup is, again, before Wednesday night's game. That's today, right? The Orioles are 6th in WRC plus. Like, that's pretty good. Gunner's playing at an MVP pace. Jordan Westbrook has a 145 WRC plus. I don't think any of us had that expectations. The Jordan Westbrook that we're watching this year, none of us were down on Westbrook, but I don't think any of the three of us saw him putting up this kind of season. I think he leads Major League Baseball in wins probability added as well. Adley is very quietly having a very good year offensively. I don't think he's ever going to get the respect he deserves as a hitter, to be honest, though. Colton Cowser's been hot. He's been cold, but he's still hitting 23% above league average right now. Mullins hasn't been good this year for the most part, but these last couple of games, his approach has looked better. I think he's been a little unlucky, especially that Tuesday night's game. He's looked better. The approach has looked better. The results just haven't been there for him the last few games. Hopefully that sparks something. If it does, that's great. But I think at the end of the year, hopefully we look back at Cedric Mullins and say it wasn't great, but overall he had a pretty decent 2024. I think there's a conversation to be had about Cedric Mullins at the end of this season, but not right now. And like the Santander takes are mind-numbing. According to Twitter, he's one of the worst hitters in all of baseball, yet his walk rate is on par for his career average. He's striking out like 4% less than last year. He's still got a 104 WRC plus. He's 77th percentile in whiff percentage, so he's making contact. It's just not hard. The hard hit rate is down like 10% from his league average or his career average. He's not barreling the baseball. He's a notoriously slow starter as well. I think mom was making him too much good food at the beginning of the season, and he just got to work that off at this point. You don't dump a guy who's been a proven star for you for the last couple of years. So when Santander starts making better contact, this team is going to take off. And just this whole lineup, it's like Bob said, we're up pacing for 100 wins, and I could easily see this team winning 100 games, and we haven't seen the offense really click together yet. Oh yeah, and Heston Kjerstad and Jackson Holliday and Kobe May are still in the minors. Like, I feel good.
Yeah, if I could even just go off of what you're saying there, Westberg, yeah, I think for me, the surprising thing is the strikeout rate. It's 19.8%, under 20%. I didn't see that coming. Walk rate is about where I thought it would be. Knew he had the power in him. I just thought the average would be a little bit lower and he'd be more like 750 OPS rather than over 850. And yeah, Santander, that's the last person I'm worried about. Like, he's been about league average. Yeah, he's batting 204 with the 706 OPS, but guess what? Offense is down all around the league. He is a slow starter. When the weather heats up this summer, he's going to lead this team to many victories. He still has 9 home runs on the season, and we've been winning without our proven, I guess, quote unquote proven, but guys can slip. But you would expect guys like Ryan Mountcastle, who only has 6 home runs on the year, batting 283 with an OPS of 788. That's perfectly fine. But for him to only have 6 home runs after 2 months into the season, that's not going to continue. Santander, we talked about. Mullins, yeah, he's struggling. There's no doubt about it. But his approach has been better lately, and his defense is so good that you're going to give him many opportunities to show that he can at least be a 700, 725 OPS bat at the bottom of the lineup. Ryan O'Hearn, he's batting 271 with an 802 OPS, but I feel like he's only struck out 10.4% of the time, and his walk rate is above league average. He hits the ball hard consistently. He's not striking out. I feel like his numbers should be better than what they are. Jorge Mateo, he's been better than you could expect. Austin Hayes, we know he had a terrible start, and he's done a little bit better since coming off the IL, but we know he's got more in him at the plate. And Ramon Arias, I mean, he had a great game tonight. I could say that. He's leading in Seager, whatever that means. We know he's a veteran. He's only had, let's see, how many plate appearances? 64 at bats on the season, so it's really hard to take much away. But Kyle Stowers getting a shot. Like, there's so much upside still left especially on the offense. Yeah, pitching, other than a bullpen, pitching's been like as good as you could expect. But the hitting, I think we're going to be first in the AL in runs scored by the end of the year.
Yeah, I could see that happening. And just to dive into Westberg for a moment, because he has been really impressive to me this year. The strikeout rate is down quite a bit, and the walk rate is up slightly from where it was last year. But the key has been that he is hitting the ball really hard. On Tuesday night's broadcast, Jeff Arnold actually had a nice breakdown of how Westberg has shortened his swing a little bit and how that has helped him get to pitches with higher velocity. And that has made all the difference in the world. And to me, this is kind of the Jordan Westberg that I think we could expect a little bit offensively. I don't know what the home run numbers are going to be at the end of the year, but you look at the fact right now, he's got an on-base percentage at 351. Nick ran off some of the numbers at WRC+. I think right now Westberg has to be in the conversation, be an all-star. I just really don't see any way around it. Santander is going to get going. Mullins, I agree with Nick that his approach has looked better. The biggest thing that I'm concerned about with him is that when he gets in the slumps, it gets really ugly. And he especially has bad platoon splits when he gets in the slumps. But we know with his speed and his defense, he's going to have a roster spot all year. And Gunnar Adley producing as expected. I don't know that you could ask for a whole lot more than what you've gotten from the lineup to this point, but you also know it can get better.
You talk about Ryan O'Hearn. I mean, the guy's got a 134 WRC plus. I feel like for his role, that he's playing out of his mind right now for his role and the purpose that he's supposed to serve for this team. Yeah, I just keep going back to the hitting. I'm really not concerned at all. I know there was a lot of conversation. We were talking before we came on how it's hard to kind of grasp. It's been a week and a half since we recorded, like the big things that have happened, the big conversations that have happened since we last recorded. But I feel like since then, there's a lot of conversation. I know Connor at Baltimore Orioles did a whole episode about this. There have been articles about this all over the place about, the Orioles and the walks and their approach at the plate and first pitch swinging and all this stuff and how aggressive they're being. That can change. It's not going to change overnight, but I'm sure they went into this season with that kind of plan, that kind of mentality to attack this year. And as long as it keeps working, they keep winning. I don't see them changing much, but if it's not working, they think they can get more out of certain guys, they'll dial it back. They're going to adjust as the season goes along. It won't be overnight. It's not like a light switch, but like over the next couple of months, over the month of June, like let's see where this team ranks offensively in a number of categories. But right now, they're near the top of the bigs in everything. I think it was Jacob Calvin Meyer. He's sassy on Twitter. Somebody responded to one of his tweets about, I can't find it now quickly live on air, but someone made a smart comment about the team's performance. About how this team not carrying or something tonight. And Jacob quote tweeted it, and I was just like, yeah, this is how the fans of a team on pace for 100 wins respond. There's a lot of that on social media right now, and I get that's not maybe paints a fair picture of the Orioles fan base, but it's still, there is so much of that. It's like this team is one of the top 3-4 teams in all of baseball, specifically offensively, and they haven't even come close to reaching their full potential this year. So it's like I can't help but be extremely excited, even if there are, as we dive into the pitching, maybe some holes and some worries there. Offensively, I feel too good about this team.
Yeah, and last thing on the offense before we switch gears here, you mentioned it. In the minor leagues, we have Jackson Holliday, who has made adjustments clearly, and they are working despite, he went on a little bit of a slump for batting average, but walking a ton, hitting for power still. He's got a 900 OPS. He'll be ready to come back up soon if they need him. Heston Kjerstad, he came up, didn't get much playing time, went back down, just continued to mash like he has been. He's batting 350 with an 1150 OPS. Kobe Mayos, his ribs are going to heal. He'll be fine in a couple weeks, and he's got an OPS approaching 1,000 down there. He's about ready. Connor Norby, he's having the best season of his career so far. OPS around 900. I mean, if you really needed it, you bring 1, 2, 3 of those guys up, and you don't miss a beat. So, yeah, the hitting will be fine.
And we're just going to keep going. It's clear it's been too long since we recorded. And somebody mentioned Kyle Stowers earlier. Like, I just want to give him a quick shout out. I've seen some conversation as well. Like, oh, is Stowers breaking out? Should he get more run over, a Hayes or Santander? I don't think so. I think Stowers, you're seeing Kyle Stowers perform exactly what we talked about coming into this year and at the beginning of the season. We talked about this in detail numerous times. I feel like Stowers is really, really good, valuable depth to keep in your organization when so many people are like, we need to just trade him. It's kind of the same conversation like so many people want to have about Heston Kjerstad right now, although Kjerstad's, I think, a much better overall player than Stowers. But still, it's like, oh, Stowers is just we're wasting him away in the minor leagues. He deserves a shot elsewhere. Just trade him. Just trade him. This is why you keep that depth. This is why you keep those guys, because look what Stowers has done over this past week or so in the big leagues. He's been immensely valuable to this lineup and helping produce some wins. And I don't think that it's I don't think that Stowers is going to magically become a guy who pushes for the full-time right field job next year if and when Santander leaves, walks in free agency. But he's on a run right now, and it's awesome to see him honestly fulfill this role. But this is why you keep this depth. This is why Connor Norby's still in the organization. Because what if you need Norby and he can do the same thing for 3 weeks for you? It's cooking right now, so I like it.
Billy cooking.
Let's shift over to the pitching staff now. The Orioles going into spring training, before we knew that Kyle Braddis and John Means had injury setbacks, looked like they had a 5-man rotation. The Corbin Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Braddis, John Means, and Dean Kramer. Well, what has happened since then is that all of them, except for Burns, have spent some time on the IL. Tyler Wells, who entered the rotation out of camp, is on the IL now. So they've had the starting rotation sustain some injuries. And then the bullpen has been spotty, and that could perhaps be charitable given some of the ups and downs we've seen from them this year. And right now we're in a little bit of a situation where they can't seem to get everybody hot in the bullpen at once. Craig Kimbrell had his struggles. He seems to be settling down now. Dylan Tate looked a little rocky in the beginning, but has looked much better since being recalled from Norfolk. Meanwhile, Keegan Aiken, who got off to a very good start this season, has struggled a little bit of late. Yenier Cano has had some ups and downs. So the bullpen has not been the lockdown force that it was at times last year when you had Cano as an all-star, Bautista on the back end, Danny Colomb, who has been pretty good this year, putting together a surprising season. And despite that, I'm going to throw out this little trivia question here. What do you think the Orioles' record was 54 games in the last season?
I'm going to
Worse
guess
than it was this year.
I was going to say 34-20.
That's correct, Bob. 34-20. So with a much better bullpen, but not as good of a lineup and a worse pitching staff, the Orioles were one game worse than they are at this time this year.
Yeah, but we did have Adam Frazier, so I mean,
oh, that's right. So
yeah, no, you're right. The bullpen, I think it's going to be fine. It's all year, unless we trade for Ryan Helsley or people who we've talked about in the past around the trade deadline. We're not going to have a Felix Bautista to close out games. So that's always going to be a little more nerve-wracking this year than it was the last year or two. But I think by the end of the year, they'll figure out the bullpen. Danny Coulomb and Cano, I like them 7th, 8th inning. I think Dylan Tate looks back. His velocity is up since they sent him down to AAA. He gave up 2 seeing eye singles tonight, but I mean, he looks sharp to me. I expect him to hopefully continue that. Jacob Webb, he's up and down, but he's decent. And I think there's guys in AAA that can really help the team, and I hope they get a chance to prove themselves in that regard. Stick around for the second episode of this week if you want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, with the bullpen, I guess this is where I don't think it's as dire as many want to make it out to be. It's still, like, statistically speaking, depending on what stat you're looking at, it's middle of the pack as far as like MLB. It's a lot of 14th to 16th to 17th range in baseball in a lot of different categories. So, and I think some of the issues are a bit exaggerated because of the lineup some nights when that lineup is not clicking and it is a close game. You make one mistake. Like Keegan Aiken gives up a home run. He leaves the pitch hanging. It goes over the fence. Like, that mistake is exaggerated. Not trying to make excuses for Keegan Aiken because he hasn't been that great this last couple of times out, but still, I think some of that, if this lineup was hitting a little bit more consistently, you wouldn't be as concerned. But, I think for the next couple of weeks at least, you can piece this together. Like Tate, like you guys have mentioned, hopefully he continues to pitch well. He pitched well again tonight, another shutout inning to close out the game against Boston. Maybe Vieira gives you a little something, or you just continue to, I don't know if we want to open that can of worms.
I
Or
was
you
going to
just,
say, you want to touch that hot stove?
let's do it. Or we continue to or what we saw from him is his debut outing, which was awful. If that's going to be who he is, you just keep churning and burning that last bullpen spot. Like that's what literally every team in baseball does. Keep trying to find that guy who is going to give you some value. And, maybe it is one of these guys that we're going to talk about later on down in AAA who gives you a start, or not a start, but a stretch of productivity. There's like 3 guys, maybe 4 that I can identify, guys that you bring them up, you put them on the 40-man, you bring them up, you give them a week, you give them 2-3 outings. If it's not working, you DFA them and let them go on their way. Someone else will claim them or whatever. If they pass through waivers and come back to Norfolk, fine and dandy. Like, if Corbin Martin gets claimed by another team because he sucked but he sucks 2 times, you let him pitch when you bring him up and try him out. Oh, well. Maybe one of those guys clicks for you. I still think I want to see Chase McDermott go the DL Hall route at the trade deadline by the end of the year. I think you just bring him up in the bullpen role and let him eat for an inning or 2. But I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I do. If I look ahead to the playoffs, though, it's still only May, so we are still looking ahead a little here. But if I look ahead to the playoffs, like the bullpen does scare me. Like I think this is where you really have to push your chips in, though. Like I wouldn't mind a trade for a starter, like a Jack Flaherty type move. Obviously, someone who performs much better than Jack Flaherty, but someone who you maybe trade some of these Rule 5 eligible guys to land you a back-end starter who can help you the last 2 months of the year. But then you've got Connor Norby sitting there. You use him, package him for a bullpen arm. You find some sort of package. There's a crowded outfield, especially with prospects. You package some of these guys to get a bullpen arm. I'm never like pro big contract or pro give money to a reliever, even Felix Bautista, but I am pro like make the big move at the deadline, overpay a little bit if you have to at the deadline to solidify that bullpen for the playoffs, because that's a unique animal. You need a dominant bullpen. And for right now, the end of May, early June, I'm fine with like Tate, Cano, Kimbrel as like a 7, 8, 9. But I already have high blood pressure. And if I have to watch that in like the 7th, 8th, 9th inning of a game 7 of a playoff series, I might die. So like the bullpen does concern me if I think ahead. For right now, I think it's fine, but I have a lot of confidence that we're going to see some big moves over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, if I could clarify my position, I only feel confident about how it's going to look in the end because I think they're going to trade for at least 1 or 2 like high leverage arms at the deadline. And yeah, for now, like you said, you churn and burn that last spot. How do you think we've gotten Cionel Perez and all these guys who have worked out well for us? Like Thiago Vera right now, you give him a week or 2, doesn't work, DFA, you bring up Matt Crook or whoever. You keep doing it, and if one of them clicks, someone else is now the new bottom of the bullpen, and you do that until you figure out what you got on your hands. And yeah, I just think by the end of the season, it'll turn out okay. If we were going into the playoffs tomorrow, yeah, it would be very scary.
Just generally speaking, I think every contending team needs bullpen help as trade deadline, because even if you go into the All-Star break with a strong bullpen, there's a certain volatility to that. And that's why bad teams will put their relievers out at the deadline, because it becomes a seller's market. They think they can get something for them, and a lot of times they do. And for the state of the bullpen this year, no, it is a big concern for me. A couple of points I will make, though, just to kind of counter some anxiety that might be out there, is that number one, I think the Oakland series put the bullpen under a microscope, because at the beginning of the year, the Orioles fans probably saw Oakland coming in early in the year and thought that's a sweep. Well, the A's, to their credit, are a little bit better team than we expected going into this year. And the Orioles bullpen, Craig Kimbrel, blows 2 leads in that series, and what should have been a sweep ends up being a series loss at home, which is a tough one. So I think that put the bullpen under a microscope. And while it is true that the Orioles bullpen maybe was more dominant at the back end last year, there were some rough patches along the way. And I'm going to throw out some names of guys who got innings last year that I think now a lot of fans have forgotten were on the team or might have forgotten they had more than one outing. Michael Givens, Logan Gillespie, Austin Voth, Jorge Lopez, Joey Crable, Reed Garrett. Chris Valamont got an appearance last year. I don't think anybody remembers that, but Chris Valamont got an appearance last year. You have to cycle through a lot of arms to get through a season, and the Orioles are in that spot right now where you're probably going to see some guys like Matt Crook get major league innings this year because you need the help. Corbin Martin probably going to get major league innings, and I know that it's not always going to be easy. And I think we saw that with Diego Vieira on Monday, but you kind of got to throw what you have against the wall to see what sticks sometimes, because you know your bullpen from start to finish is not always going to hold up. You're going to have some rough patches, and until you can figure out exactly what you need, I think that you've got to be willing to cycle through some arms.
I mean, the Dodgers also, you said Chris Valamont, the Dodgers just signed Chris Valamont. So I imagine they may be giving him a shot as well. So even the Dodgers are potentially going to give Chris Valamont a shot at some point this year. Yeah, we're going to see a lot more names come through. You're going to see a lot of waiver claims. I feel like you're probably going to see a couple of trades for cash considerations or some low-level prospects or something as well over the next couple of weeks before hopefully some bigger ones at the trade deadline. It's like I said, you can piece this together now, even with the injuries. And if you're taking a guy like, if you're keeping Irvin in the rotation, if you had to take Suarez out of the rotation for an extended period of time, I still think this bullpen is going to be in a good spot more nights than not. And so that is the one part of this roster though that does concern me, that I'm like, if you're going to make a big trade, if you're going to part with some of this talent down in the farm system, I'm okay with spending up once the trade deadline approaches for these guys, because I think that could be, you solidify this bullpen, you feel good about the 8th, 9th inning. If this lineup does start clicking, I don't see how this team, well, there are many reasons, many ways they won't, but I feel a lot more confident in this team, like seriously competing for a World Series this year.
Agreed.
I think that it's a good time to step back here and look at Cade Povich and Chase McDermott specifically. Nick just mentioned you want to see McDermott he wants to see McDermott in a bullpen role later in the year, and I agree with that. Povich, I think the Orioles are eyeing that somewhat long-term opening in the rotation for him to get his first look, but it feels imminent that as long as these guys stay healthy, they're going to get big league innings this year. So, Bob, I'll start with you. How soon could we see either one of those guys, and what are their ultimate roles in the majors this year?
I think Stroud is more likely to be in the middle of the season, say June to July, even August. I think McDermott, they're going to want to keep him as a starter until September, at least. I mean, I would love to see them, like Nick said, just let him run it out. That could be the Felix Bautista, honestly, if you give him September to get used to the role. I mean, his stuff is that good. If you want to just, if he's hit the innings you want him to hit as a starter, because that's probably still what you want him to focus on long term. But if he could just focus on one inning at a time and let it eat and just let that fastball play up, that's electric. But I don't think they will do that till September. Meanwhile, Cade Stroud, who we knew him as like a guy that could maybe touch triple digits with the fastball, but no idea where it's going. Now he's kind of eliminated the four-seam fastball from his repertoire, going sweeper, cutter, change-up heavy, and it's working. He's only walked 2 or 3 batters all year, and he had one bad outing for AAA Norfolk, which has inflated his numbers because of short sample size, but I think he looks fantastic, and I think, honestly, they DFA'd Caleb Ort. There's an open spot. If they think that Stroud's ready, I don't think it matters what his ERA in AAA looks like. I think is possible he could be activated on Friday on the major league roster, but I think he'll be up at some point over the next couple months to get a shot.
Yeah, I just see like McDermott. You say, all right, you got 20 innings left. You're going to throw 20 more innings this year. Let's bring it up to the major leagues, and you're going to give us those 20 innings, 1 inning at a time in the major leagues. I could see that. I'm fine with not using him as a starter in the major leagues this year. Povich, on the other hand, if I'm just looking at those two guys, I do agree with Stroud. Stroud's out pitching or Stroud is pitching much better than any of his stat lines show right now. But Povich is the one guy that I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about this. Like your confidence meter with bringing up Cade Povich in the next 2-3 weeks or something. Like the numbers look so good. He's throwing the ball in the zone more. He's getting results. The home run rate is like he's halved it. The walk rate is down. I got walk per nine and Ks per nine. I hate that. The walk rate was 14, almost 15% last year in AAA. It's down to below 9%. AAA, I don't know where he ranks in all of minor league baseball. Him and McDermott were 1-2 in strikeouts in all of minor league baseball like a week ago, but he's striking out 33% of guys in AAA right now. Opponents are hitting 194 against him. Like I think he's really, really close to coming up to the big leagues, especially if Means is going to be out for an extended period of time. I think while you've got the opportunity to keep Suarez up there and you've got this rotation the way it is, having Suarez as a good fallback option, I think is pretty solid. You let Cade come up and get some run, see what he can do. And if it's not good, you send him back down to AAA. You move Suarez back into the rotation. It's no harm, no foul. Povich gets to learn from that. We talk about this a million times. These rookies that come up, they're going to get exposed. They're going to struggle. Grayson did it as well. Grayson went back down. I'm not saying Povich is going to return and be Grayson 2.0, but he's got more film, more data to look at, more experience to draw from to go back to AAA and work on that. And maybe we see him again at the end of the year. But I kind of like to see him get some run sometime this month.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Kramer, he's already thrown again. I'm pretty sure he's already pretty much healthy. They're just going to wait until the time is up. So maybe he misses 2 more turns through the rotation. I'd love to see Povich get those 2 turns, even if it's a guarantee that when Kramer's back, he goes back down to the minor leagues. Just like you said, I think let him get it out of the way. The major league debut, take whatever you can from that. And honestly, if he just lights it up, starts on fire, then you figure it out. That's a good problem to have. So yeah, I was hoping Povich got the call when Suarez got the spot start, but there's still time to give him a start or 2 before Kramer gets back.
Yeah, there's going to be an opportunity there. I looking at it from a couple of different perspectives, regardless of what the approach is, you need to do what is best for his development, whether that's bringing him up for a start or 2, let him get his feet wet, and then send him back down, or handle it more the way you would handle a position player, which is, John Means is going to be out for a while. There's a long-term opening. Let Povich settle into the rotation and pitch well. And I'm glad that Nick brought up Suarez because he's one of the guys, along with Cole Irvin, that I think allows you to take a risk that at the beginning of the season you might not have thought you could take, which is what if Cade Povich does struggle through 3 or 4 turns through the rotation? Right now, you've got 4 other starters that can help pick him up, not to mention a possible long man, likely Suarez, to pick up some innings. The Orioles can afford to take that risk, but what I'll throw this out just as a question here is that good for his development?
Yeah, it's tough because obviously we're not there like in the clubhouse. We don't know his mentality. We don't have the better understanding of the underlying data as well. I'm just looking at the schedule real quick. And I mean, you look at the month of June, it's a lot of divisional games. It's the Rays, it's the Blue Jays, it's the Rays again. Then it's the Braves. Then it's the
not
Phillies.
A lot of days off either.
Yeah, no days off. Yankees, Astros, Guardians, Rangers. I mean, it's a lot of it's going to be an important stretch with 1 day off next month. That's it, the 17th. I don't know. Like that's another thing to consider. You want to throw him in there against? I know Ronald Acuna, like that's heartbreaking. But it's still a really good Atlanta lineup. Do you want to throw him in an Atlanta lineup or a Phillies lineup at home? I don't. Do you throw him up against the Yankees? I don't know. That's a tough. The Astros are. I don't know exactly how well they're playing. I feel like they're playing much better now. But that's a dangerous lineup that can just explode any night they want to. I don't know. That's a tough question. It's going to be tricky this month. I want to see him come up there could be some opportunities, but it is some pretty important games, the stretch of games coming up this month.
I think you do it. And obviously, I mean, it's up to them to determine if it's the right thing to do. But for me, even if he gets hit, even if it gets lit up, let him get a taste of that and let him chase that dragon. I got to get back. I got to get better. I think it's helped Bradish and Grayson when they first came up to have that competitive drive when they go back down. So I don't see how much it could hurt, but obviously I'm not an expert in this field.
I'll just wrap up here with this question. We're now a third of the way into the season. Nick, you were actually not on the air when we did our predictions preseason. How does the rest of the regular season turn out for the Orioles?
Good question. I just think this offense is going to click consistently and together at some point over the next couple of weeks. The weather's getting warmer. You're playing in some favorable ballparks. You're playing against AL East competition that the Orioles have. The AL East versus AL East, the Orioles are kings right now. The Orioles are also good on the road. Like I mentioned earlier, they're good against teams above 500. They've played the Yankees well, and the Yankees they're only one game ahead of Baltimore right now. I think just this month alone, you've got in the month of June with all these divisional games, you've got a chance to make a big statement, and hopefully they do that. And the rest of the way, you win 100 plus games, and I think you take the AL East. I don't have a lot of confidence in this Yankees team to hold up the way they have. The pitching has been tremendous. You got to give the Yankees all the credit in the world for what they're doing right now. Judge has turned it around. The pitching staff has been phenomenal. Garrett Cole is coming back, I think, in a couple of weeks. I still just don't have faith that team can hold up. And if they do, then it's going to be one hell of a last month or two of the season. Yankees, Orioles, it's going to be fun. I think we're going to see a lot of high-scoring games. You're going to see a lot of dramatic gunner home runs. And you know what? Honestly, let the Yankees stay healthy. Let Garrett Cole come back and shove. And let's see Yankees, Orioles down to the wire this year. I'm down for it.
Yeah, I believe we play them the second to last series of the season. So that should be anxiety inducing. And yeah, I agree. I think we will cross 100 wins again. I'll say 103. And I'll say we take the East. And yeah, I think we'll clear the East by 5 games by the time the season ends. And again, if the Yankees can keep it up, hats off to them. But like Nick, I can't see them continuing this pace. I don't think their lineup is that scary outside of 2 of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. But yeah, I think we take the East, and I think Orioles fans aren't happy till we win a World Series, but they're as happy as they could be after a regular season.
I said the Orioles were going to win the AL East before the season started, and I will stick with that. And with that, that does it for this episode of Orioles on the Verge. We will be back later this week to talk minor league pitching. There were a lot of promotions in the month of May, and we're going to look at that, but we're also going to look at some of the longer-term implications, such as Rule 5 eligibility and how some of these pitchers might or might not be used in trades when the trade deadline rolls around in a few months. And there's also some guys that could be solutions for the Major League team that we're going to cover as well. So you're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can find us on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And a quick programming note, our monthly update to our top 50 prospects list is probably going to drop within the next week or so. And that is available exclusively to members of our Patreon community. If you're not a member of our Patreon community yet, head over and sign up as a paying member. You can join for as little as $3 a month, and at the $5 and $10 levels, have access to bonus daily coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spen. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by Bet Online and part of the Believe Podcast Network.